G'day and welcome to another week of Ministry Life Online. This week we dive into the topic of theological reflection, and so you'll be working through your module around that, and there are a couple of videos that we've captured from our workshop this week to help you get a sense of how to move through this process of theological reflection. So you'll see there are 4 stages to that, and there's a process that I want to encourage you to think about using to unpack what's going on in your ministry experiences. The reason I wanted to do this video though was just to clarify something for you as you go about completing your ministry development plan reflections. So as you no doubt remember, in first term the idea is that we've set up our ministry development plans to govern ministry practice for the rest of the year. In term 2 now, and then again in term 3 and term 4, your job is going to be to reflect on how you're growing in the ministries that you've chosen as you're pursuing the ministry goals that you've set. So the basic idea is that now that you've set your goals and your strategies and you've gone about pursuing them through this first semester, you stop now and think through, in doing the things that you've been doing, how have you been growing in the midst of that? So you're going to want to ask questions like, how can I see God at work in this situation? Where am I seeing his hand in the midst of this? How am I growing in this situation? What are the things that I'm being challenged with by God as I'm going about doing ministry in this ministry area? Where are the weaknesses that I'm sensing I might need to work on? What are the strengths that I'm discovering about the way that I go about ministry? So all of that is to say that you have an opportunity when you're doing your reflection at the end of this term and then again term 2 and 3, 3 and 4, you have the opportunity to really stop and reflect on your growth. Now the reason that's important is because it can be very easy to default to reporting in your ministry development plan rather than reflecting. And what I mean by that is you end up giving simply a summary of activity or a list of the things that you've been doing and never actually move from that into reflection. And there is a difference between reporting and reflecting. When we're reporting, what we're doing is reporting on the facts, what's happened, where it happened, etc. So when you do your reflection, you'll need to give me a bit of a summary report. So you're going to tell me in the summary format, what have you been doing this term in this ministry area to pursue that goal that you've set. But that shouldn't take you too long to do, and you don't want to go into too much detail about all of the ins and outs of the things you've been doing, okay? Because you'll end up using all of your word limit just on that. Once you've given me a short report, okay, a short summary of what you've been doing, what I then want you to do is start pushing into reflection, okay? So there's almost a continuum between reporting and really good reflection. And so some students find it difficult transitioning from reporting what they've been doing to actually reflecting deeply on how they're being challenged and growing in the process. So some students, for example, will give me a report and then say, and this was really good. So here's what I did, and I found it really helpful. And then they simply move on without actually telling me why they found it helpful. Now, it's good that they're giving me a sense of that it's been positive or that it's been negative maybe, but if they never actually stop, and if you never actually stop to explain to me why you found it helpful and how you found it helpful, you're not really pushing into reflection. You're really making a simple statement about its helpfulness or usefulness. So when you've done a summary report, don't just tell me, yes, this was good, or I found this really helpful, or this has really grown me even, without them telling me how it's grown you. Okay, now some students will get to this point, they'll give me a report, they'll say this was helpful, and then they'll say, and it's helpful because I learned humility in the midst of this. And then they stop there and don't tell me more about how they learned humility. So it's one thing to say, here's what I did. It's then another to say, this was really helpful. You then move further along this spectrum, if you like, when you start telling me what you've learned. But what I really want you to do is go one step further than that and tell me how you've learned it. So don't simply tell me, for example, that you learned humility or you learned patience or you really feel God challenging you in a certain way without then telling me how. Give me some details about the scenario that you've gone through or the way in which you've really sensed God growing you in this particular way. So if you're learning about preaching to a congregation, or you're learning about giving a talk or leading a Bible study, for example, don't just tell me that you've learned you need to be open with the group and you've learned you need to prepare well, etc. Tell me how you learned that lesson. So why is it that you're saying you've learned you've got to prepare well? Did you lead a Bible study, for example, and not prepare? And if so, what happened? How did you go about, or sorry, how did you learn the lessons, or how did you grow in the ways in which you're telling me that you've grown? So I hope that makes sense. I wanted to make that clear, that there's a difference between simply reporting and actually reflecting, and there's almost a continuum between those two ideas, where you're giving me the facts all the way down this continuum to start describing A, was it positive, was it helpful, B, how was it positive and helpful, and C, once you've told me how you're growing or how you're being challenged, give me some details around that. Paint me a picture. Give me a window through which I can see how you're growing and developing in your ministry placement. So that's the general idea behind your reflection in your ministry development plans. There are some instructions on that in your guidelines, so I'll refer you back to those. But as you're going through this process, the key thing is to remember, don't just stop short at reporting what you've been doing. Make sure you push into reflection and tell me, describe for me how you're growing and being challenged and being developed in the ministry areas that you're active in. Okay, that's enough from me. I hope that's helpful for you. If you do have any questions about this, because sometimes it's a new way of looking at things and it can be hard to make that mental shift, then please feel free to get in touch with me. That means you can send an email, you can post something on a discussion forum, you can pick up the phone, or if in the case of some people, you may be in a different time zone or further away, let's do a Skype or do something like that so we can actually connect and talk this idea through. Because I want you to have clarity about what I'm asking for so that you don't feel like you didn't really understand what I was looking for. So I hope that's enough. I hope that's helpful. Please, as I said, get in touch with me if you've got any more questions, and I look forward to reading your reflections as your MDPs start coming in. Thanks very much.